Welcome to the Nerd Journey Podcast. Our goal is to help you, the technology professional, accelerate your career progression, increase your job satisfaction, and be more effective in your existing role.
We want to bring listeners like you the career advice we wish we'd been given earlier in our careers.
I'm John White, at VJourneyman on Twitter, sharing co-host duties with Nick Cordy at NetworkNerd_.
We're two former IT operations guys who have moved on to pre-sales roles with technology vendors. We have our opinions, but we also like to highlight the journeys of others and see what we can learn from them.
We'd also like to ask for your feedback to make this a conversation, not a one-way broadcast. Email us at nerdjourneypodcast@gmail.com or DM us at nerdjourney on Twitter. So come join us on our nerd journey.
Let's take a trip.
Welcome everyone to episode 346, a special episode of the Nerd Journey Podcast. We're dedicating today's show to the memory of Todd Cochrane, the founder of Blubrry Podcasting and a true pioneer in our industry, who passed away on September 8th, 2025. We had the great privilege of recording a pretty extensive two-part interview with him. That's episodes 250 and 251. And it was an amazingly valuable conversation. This is a loss for podcasting overall, isn't it?
It is a heavy loss, John. But you know what? In his honor, we're going to present that full interview today as a single piece, one episode. We've taken out our original intros and outros, but if you want to listen to those, you can go back to the original episodes 250 and 251. We'll have links to those in the show notes. But before we dive into the lessons from the interview, I think it's important for people to know the kind of person Todd was. I don't claim to have known him extremely well, but I had the chance to go to Podcast Movement 2025 in Dallas-Fort Worth this year, and I observed him as part of this panel for people to grow their podcasts. And I remember him saying he always tried to say yes when someone invited him as a guest on their show, whether you had an audience of 10 or 10 million. I can tell you for a fact he wasn't just saying that. That's how we got him on our show.
We just asked him.
And that one story should tell you everything you need to know about his generosity and his commitment to the entire podcasting community, whether you had a big audience or a small one.
Yeah, exactly. And that community spirit was built on a foundation of an incredible business and really interesting career acumen as well. We wanted to front load this for everyone because what you're about to hear is essentially a masterclass in career adaptation. One of the most powerful themes Todd unpacks is how he constantly evolved Blubrry as the market changed, shifting from a media agency to a service provider when he saw the writing on the wall. He knew he had to pivot to survive and thrive.
And I think that's the key takeaway for all of us. He talks about this shift, and it's a really good parallel for our own careers in technology. He didn't have to abandon the foundation, his knowledge of the podcasting space, the tools that he'd built, the community he served. He just changed his focus a little bit over time. And it's a lesson for any of us out there who are listening that feel stuck. You don't have to burn it all down and start over from nothing. You can leverage that core expertise and shift and pivot to where the value actually is that you can provide next. As you listen, pay close attention to how Todd identified that need for change and took action on it.
And the reason he was able to pivot is the other big thing we want you to listen for. He was a lifelong learner and tinkerer. His story doesn't start with a business plan. It starts with him being a self-described geek, tinkering with electronics in the Navy and running dial-up BBS boards. That constant curiosity is what gave him the vision to see what was next. It's what allowed him to build the first tools, write the first book, and even strategize about AI decades later.
And when you put all that together, you have this incredible story of a man who had extreme generosity, but also understood strategy. He walked that difficult line of being a vendor and owning a business and also being a beloved community member better than almost anyone. And the core of how he did that was staying in the trenches with us. For him, it wasn't just a business to run Blubrry. He was a prolific creator himself. He shared his passion and knowledge for nearly 2 decades on his own podcasts. The tech-focused Geek News Central has over 1,800 episodes. And then he also had the New Media Show as well as the Podcast Insider show that they did for Blubrry. So he wasn't just building the tools, he was using them, teaching the community how to succeed week in and week out. That, my friends, is a legacy. So as you settle in for this conversation, we hope you'll listen for those themes. The power of being able to shift and pivot, the importance of lifelong learning, and the value of generosity. So here's our complete conversation with the late, great Todd Cochrane.
Todd Cochrane, thanks for joining us on the Nerd Journey. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm with fellow nerds, so it's like I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do today? And then maybe we'll back into how you got there.
Yeah, so today I'm the founder and CEO of Blubrry Podcasting, which is a full-service podcast host. We work with, I think at this time it's about 100,000 shows at a variety of levels between them using us for hosting, using us for analytics, or even using our PowerPress plugin for WordPress. So it kind of runs the gambit. But yeah, we're a full-service podcast hosting platform and have a team of about 17. So we're pretty small, but we've been at this now since 2005, which is kind of crazy.
We use Blubrry statistics and definitely use PowerPress.
Awesome.
Can you tell us a little bit about your kind of journey into the tech space? Maybe rewinding a little bit.
Yeah, I can, really can go back to the 80s, to be honest with you. In Tech school, in high school, I took 2 years of electronics. And 1983, then I joined the Navy and my official job title was an aviation electronics technician. But it was kind of a twist. I fell into a pretty cool job where I was actually flying. I was not a pilot, but I was a back-end operator in P-3 aircraft, but not traditional P-3 aircraft. They were more intelligence-based collection platforms. So I really did that heavily for 25 years and got exposure when I was involved with what was termed at the time special projects to, as box du jour. Someone would show up, especially after 9/11, people would show up with a box that would do a specific function. I would do the designs, mechanical and electrical engineering designs to put them in the airplane. And sometimes those boxes would be flying and doing what they did within a couple of days of, someone showing up with the box du jour. But my real true Navy background was synthetic aperture radar. That's something that I worked on for many, 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 many years, primarily with Sandia National Labs. So I had a pretty deep electronics tech stuff. And that whole time period, I had dabbled in running a bulletin board in the days of when there was dial-up that was happening. And I was, even living in Guam, we were trying to figure a way to tunnel back to the United States and pull down at the time shareware. So I really was kind of a geek in all aspects of job and kind of life. And when the bulletin board era died, and I basically became a blogger. I was a failed blogger. I wasn't a great blogger. There might have been 300 people that read the website. And I think that was about 2002, maybe a little earlier. Yeah, probably 2002. And then I just landed in this podcasting thing in 2004. But I continued to work a regular job. When I retired from the Navy in 2007, I actually spent 12 years doing a tech rep job. So I was from the seat that I left when I was active duty to the seat that I sit down as a civilian. It's really the same desk, just with 90 days of separation, and continued to assist the Navy and the people that I was working with and all the way up to 2019, while at the same time running a company on the side. And needless to say, those were some exciting years because there was not a lot of free time. So from a technical standpoint, really, I've been out of aviation just a short period of time, probably 4 years, but at the same time running this business that entire time.
Does the Navy have, I'm trying to think of the term, I think it's a warrant officer program?
They do.
Was that part of what you were involved in?
No, I retired as a senior chief, as an EA.
Oh, okay.
And so I was enlisted all the way up through. I had the opportunity to go warrant officer, but just decided to just was happy being a chief in the Navy as a termite. And really what ended up happening was I hit higher tenure. So I could have stayed into 26 years, and I punched out in 2007 at 25 and some change. It was largely because they had a job offer for me. They said, hey, we want you to come back as a civilian. So I took that opportunity and made the swap. But it was pretty exciting because I got to see a lot of high-end technology, a lot of stuff that I can't talk about for 95 years. Of course, I'll be dead and gone before they unclassify a lot of it. Things were changing so fast at that time. It was amazing how the technology from when I joined in 1983 to, when I retired, how much advancements was made. And, some of the stuff that's going on today with AI and GPU, we were taking advantage of GPUs in those early days of GPUs being available. It really transformed a lot of stuff.
I was going to say, it almost sounds like designing those boxes in the airplanes was sort of like being either a product designer or a product manager in a way. Can you tell us if there are any similarities to that? As the designer, did you hold the cards for owning the design soup to nuts, or was it more of a collaborative exercise?
My degree is with Emory-Riddle. I have a professional aeronautics degree with a minor in program management. So, a lot of that work was really based on a lot of program management skills. But typically, for what I can say, on the systems that we owned, that the Navy owned, that we built and had designed, we had input into what capabilities we wanted, what features we wanted, software review. It was a full scheme. Some of the systems were born from an idea, built, designed, UI, UX, the whole 9 yards, that I was able to have a hand touch in. Now, it was a team, so it wasn't just me. But in the end, those last probably 15 years, again, oftentimes, like I said, someone would show up with or we would know it's coming, but someone would show up with a box. And then we would have to essentially wire it in. Some of the stuff, sometimes it was as simple as a computer. Sometimes it was as complex as tying into multiple systems and having interaction with other parts of the platform. So that was the uniqueness of the job. You just never knew from day to day what was going to. And sometimes we'd get a call from a national company that you would know, like Lockheed or someone like that. And we'd have relationships with these folks, but there would be all of a sudden say, hey, we've got something interesting we want you to see. And so our job was really to kind of test and evaluate, and more importantly, in a real world situation, not necessarily on some range.
Man, that's so fascinating.
It was fun, and we were unique in that typically, if you think about aviation, and when you have, let's talk about a commercial aircraft like a 787 or 777. They're all built exactly the same. Now, the electronic components in the cockpit may be a little bit different based upon the package a customer buys, but that airframe and all that stuff is pretty much the same, and they punch them out. Supply chain is set up so that if you need a part, sometimes you just walk over the airplane next to you and get that part if you want to rob it. But our situation was everything was unique, and configuration control across multiple airplanes was critical. So every airplane was different in a sense. There was not one that was exactly the same. And sometimes it was a situation where we were upgrading multiple airplanes at a time. Matter of fact, in 2004, I got hurt pretty bad in a swimming pool accident in Bahrain, and it grounded me. I couldn't fly no more. And this is kind of the genesis story of the podcast. I was stuck in Waco, Texas, working at L3. I was basically doing contract enforcement. I was making sure that our taxpayers' dollars were being spent wisely and monitoring aircraft builds. So I got that basically government/civilian interaction. And sometimes you often hear about the $800 toilet or something to that, or a hammer. And my job was really to prevent that type of an activity from happening. So for that aspect, it was really it was a very, very cool thing to do for a few years. And having that, that insight to both the developments, actually right on the ground, someone putting a wire into an aircraft, all the way to delivery of the aircraft and test and everything that went along with it.
And did you have to sort of sell that design idea to other people in your teams from a, hey, we should do it this way?
Well, what it would be is the team was multifaceted in multiple locations. We had people like in Naval in Paxton, Maryland, and we had teams spread all over the place. And oftentimes each specific system would have their own reviews and discussions and planning. And it's all about money too. What's in the budget, what can be done within the time frame and within budget. So it really was a complete team effort. And you had subject matter experts. I was a SME in a specific systems. So I publicly talked about my background was in electronic warfare, radar, synthetic aperture radar. That was kind of my background, was what I did for many, many years while I was active duty. So, and then there was SMEs, that subject matter experts, they would be in charge of different systems or be the expert for different systems. So, and the relationship was interesting because not only was I working with the team for whatever system we were putting in, at the same time, I was supporting the sailor that was out deployed somewhere and called back and say, hey, Todd, I got a problem. And then we would troubleshoot, or sometimes I'd have to fly out and assist a fix, whatever it may have been. So it was multifaceted. Not only was I, working on design and implementation, I was also supporting the platform when it was out doing what it was doing or when the platform was home. And that's why I spent so many years in Hawaii. I was in Hawaii for 25 years.
It's so analogous to the IT generalist life in my mind.
The IT piece of it, was kind of funny because you're dealing with a lot of software, right? And you're dealing with software that it would be very bad for someone to be able to infiltrate that software. So, there was all kinds of gatekeeping going on as well to make sure that software was well protected. And the IT guys actually drove us the most crazy because as things advanced, locking the system down, locking it deeper down, locking it deeper, and sometimes they lock it so deep that it would break something. But, that's par for the course.
Yeah, there's always that natural friction between security, functionality, scalability.
I think it set me up good too, because when I resigned my federal position and came on to work full time with the company, I still had this, I'd had 10 years, 12 years as a civilian, then 25 years in the military. For me, the transition was pretty smooth from military to civilian because I'd worked with civilians a lot. So I didn't have this mindset of someone that maybe just came out of the military that never had a lot of civilian interaction. So for my transition was very, very smooth. And then running the company, I was already well prepped and had been running it basically as my part-time job, essentially, which was a challenge too, to separate, I guess the better word is church and state. When I was at work for the Navy, I was work for the Navy. And when I was doing my business, I had to make sure that there was no overlap because that would be conflict of interest, very bad. Matter of fact, security clearance reviews were very deep into looking at how I separated that. And I literally, because I couldn't have my phone in the office, my phone would stay in my car. And if I needed to do a business call, I could do it at lunch or after work. So there was this melding of two things. And they knew what I was doing. It wasn't hidden. Matter of fact, I had to have permission to do what I was doing the way I was doing it. So, work at work was work, and then business was on the side to business. But when I transitioned, it really made me realize I should have probably done it about 10 years earlier because I needed a little more stick and rudder on the business that we were building on the podcasting side. So for literally the last 4 years now, my job is really coordinating with the software development team and the production and marketing team, make sure all that stuff is flowing. So the project management piece has come in pretty handy. We work in Scrum at the company. So I'm essentially, even though I'm the owner, I'm essentially a Scrum Master as well. So it's kind of crazy.
It sounds like the program management skills that you were practicing really came into good use there. I'm just wondering maybe if you can tell us a little bit about that origin story of, you're doing avionics systems in the Navy, and then boom, here's this podcasting company.
Yeah.
What was the nugget there, the thing that everything crystallized around?
Like I said, I'm out in Waco, Texas. I'm in a body clamshell because I had broke my L1 vertebrae, smashed it. It since I'd had a surgery and H brace, and was really, to be honest with you, lucky to be able to walk because I had such huge displacement in my spinal cord during the swimming pool accident. And, just being able to walk, I was pretty pleased I was still alive and I was functioning. But in Texas in October, it's hot. It's 100 and shade. Because I was working at a plant, and the plant has no air conditioning on the floor. I had air conditioning in my office. So by the time I get done with the day, I was just wrung out. So I would spend a lot of time in my hotel room on the laptop, just kind of surfing the internet. And I happened upon Adam Curry and Dave Weiner's Daily Source Code, which was really kind of one of the few Genesis shows for podcasting. And, here I am, a tech blogger who literally has almost no one reading the site. And I said, I like to talk. So I literally went over to Walmart and picked up a $14 LabTech horrible microphone. I mean, it was the worst you could possibly buy. And started recording a podcast. And because I was a geek already and understood XML and some of the stuff that you had to know in those early days, pretty short order, I was up online. And then really the eureka moment came is when I woke up one morning and my web hostess said, "Hey, you're out of bandwidth. We've shut you down." And I'm like, what? How did that happen? Because there was no Blueberries at the time, the only way to fix that was to throw money at it and buy more shared hosting accounts. And there's a whole story about moving the show around every 3 days just to keep it online because, that's what we had to do in those days. And I think what ended up happening was it was unique in that was October 9th. Matter of fact, fast coming up on my 19th year anniversary of doing podcasting. Of course, I come back to Hawaii and I tell my wife, "Hey, I'm doing this podcasting thing." And, she just kind of rolls her eyes and what's that, because no one knew what the word meant, and put the little finger at me. And she says, you got to figure out how to make money with this for the first couple, and within a couple of years, or I'm going to, cut you off because I was spending a lot just to keep the show online. So that progressed to an email I got in November from a small publishing company called Wiley. Didn't even know who they were, to be honest with you. I was not an English major. I was a nerd, so when I write, even today, Grammarly is my best friend. They asked me to write the first book on podcasting. And basically my response to them was, you got to be beeping kidding me. And they said, "No, we're not kidding. Why don't you go look us up?" And I did. And then ultimately that ended up with a contract. So I got an advance. I fixed the money issue right away. I think they gave me like $13,000 or something like that to write the book. Then that led to me starting a network. Then the network led to really ultimately in June of 2005, GoDaddy called me. In fact, GoDaddy's still the sponsor of my Genesis show, Geek News Central. And they said, "Hey, we'd love to sponsor your podcast." And so I did a month with them, really not knowing how much to charge because no one was doing advertising. It was one of the first handful of advertising deals. I wasn't the first, but very, very close. And they came back to me in July and said, "Hey, we want to renew you for a year." And I was like, "Oh, how did we do?" And it was like 370 customers we converted. And, I kind of said, "Okay, let me work the math on this and I'll talk to you tomorrow." So, here's one of those things where you have to understand your worth. And I really had no idea what my worth was. And I called back the following day and I dropped the number and she agreed, like a used car salesman, when you bid too high. And I said, "Well," she says, "Yeah, you underbid it, didn't you?" And I said, "Well," I said, I just out of the blue, I said, "How about a bonus if I do over a certain amount?" And she laughed and she worked with me and we got a deal together. And the pivotal moment was, and this is what people really have to listen for opportunities that present themselves. I was a solo podcaster doing a show, building an audience. And she said to me, "Do you know anyone else that would like to advertise with GoDaddy?" I said, "Yes, I do. Give me a couple of weeks." Now, I built this tech network, so I already had 12 or 13 shows that I could immediately represent. And it was one of those deals where, okay, I'll take a percentage of that. And on my next podcast, I said, I need a lawyer, I need an MBA, I need a graphics guy, and I need a programmer. And we're having a call in 10 days. If you're one of those, be on it. 10 days later on freeconferencecall.com at the time, we did a conference call and a lawyer was on the line, a graphics guy, and an MBA. And the graphics guy knew a programmer. I said, well, get him on the phone. And in the end, we formed Raw Voice, which is the parent company for Blubrry, over the telephone. And we all had regular jobs. So everyone was working this at night, and we built this and profitable from month one. Even though we did dig into our pockets to kind of, get some startup money going, we never went to Silicon Valley and did that route. Well, I did, but they told me I was too old. At 40, they said, you're too old to get around, and your team would have to move to Silicon Valley. And, that wasn't happening because everyone were grown-ups and they had families. So that's the genesis story of how the business got started and the podcast too. So kind of one thing led to the other. But the one thing that we were always smart with is we knew that we had to have money in the bank. We knew we had to be profitable. We knew we had to make payroll because, I didn't have $25 million of VC to use. We had to build this slowly. And that's what we did over the years. We built it slowly and never extended ourselves too far.
There's a couple things that I can pick out there that really, jump out at me. Like, one is this idea that you had identified a kind of technology wave that was coming along. You were passionate about the thing that you were doing that coincided with this technology wave, and you kind of made a bet. I mean, there's probably a couple different ways you could have gone. You could have maybe gone to work for somebody who was looking to monetize in this place, but you made a bet that, this is probably a business that, because of where I am and the structures that I set up already, I could turn this into a business without too much work, as opposed to somebody that was starting, like somebody who's going from a cold start.
Right.
You had really warmed it up already.
I had definitely warmed it up, but believe me, we made it up as we went because there was some stuff that we threw against the wall that those ideas didn't stick. Our first product was abject failure, but we learned from that product and we made a shift and changed our model. And I think one of the takeaways I've always done is we build a lot of stuff. And if something is not working, I don't dwell on it. I don't ride that ship into the ground. We move on. Maybe we keep the product, and maybe we don't. Yeah, I think a lot of times people that are running a business or in the tech center, they get so focused. They think this is the idea. This has got to work because I believe it and I love it. And then what happens? They burn every last dollar that they have and don't shift early enough. And that was one thing that happened with us too, is we were in the beginning years, we were basically a media agency. We were representing podcasters for ad deals. All the shows were small. The biggest shows maybe were 50,000 listeners. And matter of fact, we didn't even know that number until we built a system to measure shows. That was one of our second projects we did. And we introduced that in 2006. What we started to see after a number of years in business is as shows were coming online like Adam Carolla and others, the advertising money, I saw my budget starting to shrink. And that money was being redistributed into those bigger shows. Even though we were still having huge success, it's easier for someone to go into a boss and say, hey, I've got Adam Carolla that's going to run advertising for us versus, I got this dude named Todd that's got 400 small shows. The money started rolling out and we did a strategic shift to become a service provider. So as the advertising revenue was declining, the service business kind of crossed in the middle and we dodged a bullet. We would not have made it had we not shifted to a service business. So it's one of those things too, is, keep your eye on the ball, what's going on in the space. At that time I had 5 competitors. Now I have 30 and my product is commoditized. So what do we have to do today? How do we compete today? We compete on features and continue to bring new stuff to the market. And we do that through feedback from folks like you to say, we want something, this would help us grow our show, or this would help us give us information. So in the tech sector, even though it's a SaaS, it's software as a service, you have to be aware of what's going on. You can't have your head stuck in the sand. Too often, I think that happens is, and especially we're an older company, you do have to teach the old dog new tricks. You have to, because if you don't, and you look what's happening with AI right now, it's going to change the world completely. And knowledge workers are going to, if they're not on the ball with this, 2 or 3 years, they may find themselves without a job. Things are going to, even right now, are moving quickly in the space. And, to be honest with you, going back to when I started my show, I had one goal. Before, of course, my wife told me you need to make money. I was just trying to build authority. I wanted a press pass to at what the time was called the Consumer Electronics Show. It's now CES. They call it the CES show. But I just wanted a press pass to CES. That was my ticket to get in. And I got that. So I was building up authority to be able to get a press pass. So, I did it out of pure desire just to go and hang out and check that show out. And then then things kind of morphed as time went on.
When we think about startups, we've heard this term pivoting. And I think it never occurred to me that you're not actually pivoting the company. You're just kind of diversifying your ideas about where success and money is going to come from. And that is true for an individual just as much as it is for a company. Like I remember, this is a, kind of a standard joke that I tell anytime that I'm giving a presentation. Like one of the skills that brought money in for me was my ability to crimp like a Cat5 cable, right? If I had doubled down on that and said, no, this is what it's going to be forever,
right, then
I would not have a job right now.
Yeah, you'd have missed out on fiber and everything else that came on.
Absolutely. Software, a whole bunch of other things. So like the things that you do in your life and in your career that you can use to provide value to an employer or to a business, maybe your own business, that's diversification, and you're basically buffering yourself from market forces destroying you.
And as you get older, let's be honest, when you hit that 50 mark, and I'm 59, your employability, unless you're staying current, goes down dramatically, and you get more expensive for an employer. So you have to be that lady or that dude that's a subject matter expert in whatever you do. And one of the pieces of advice I got in the early days of being in the Navy, I had a very, very good friend. His name was Randy. And Randy was, he was tough. He was hardcore. And he basically said to me, Todd, you just need to attach yourself to the smartest person in the room and suck them dry. Basically learn everything they know or everything they will tell you. And so I did that. I attached myself to who I thought was the smartest people in the room. And that has paid off in huge dividends, because now my CTO is fantastic. Her name is Elena. I attached myself to the smartest person in the room, and she is my right-hand person in the company that I trust her completely, but she's a heck of a lot smarter than me when it comes to the programming, the tech, and I'm not a coder. So I think it goes back to that saying, if you surround yourself, but I think it's more than surrounding yourself. I think if you are in a field that you're trying to stay current on, you need to become the person other people want to attach you to. But when you're early in your career, it's easy to be annoyed by that older, wise individual, but they have so much experience. Like this one story I like to tell, I was having this problem. It was a signal that was running down a wire. I was having reflected wave feedback, and that's a electronics technical term. And it was literally kicking my butt. I'd been working on that for 2 or 3 days. And a senior fellow at Sandia National Lab was on the airplane, and I said to him, I said, hey, can you look at this and tell me? He said, well, Todd, what you got going on? And he's kind of mad scientist guy. He got hair coming out of his nose, but he's this genius. And he looked at that schematic and he says, you got a 0 dB pad, go grab and put one right there. That'll fix it. And it did. But then I said, okay, how did you know that? And a 15-minute conversation I had with him literally fixed hundreds of problems that I had going forward years in advance. So when you have that opportunity to get help from a genius, and they can bring the topic down to your level, man, you just need to just milk that dry. Because what do they have? They've got experience they've seen stuff you've never seen. So yeah, I think that's, that advice that I got from my buddy Randy, who I'm still best friends with today, was probably one of those pivotal moments that gave me good career advice.
And I think it is an iteration of being mindful of the gaps you have. Just like when you got on your show and said, I need an MBA. I need a lawyer. I need these other personas, developer, because I don't have those skills. And so it is the seeking the knowledge from other people, but I think it's also the humility, as you said, to recognize you don't have it. You need to go get it, and approaching it in a humble way. Hey, will you help me?
I was a high school graduate to go into the Navy. I didn't have a degree. I didn't get my degree until after I'd been in the Navy for 20 years. And actually, the degree to me, when I got it after being in the Navy for 20 years, is I understand why this knowledge you get in college is so advantageous, because I had already learned that through the road of hard knocks over 20 years. So I just went to college just to get the credits, to be able to, because I already knew this stuff. Going back to what you said, I think that you just have to surround yourself and follow good people. I often saw folks that would fail because, frankly, they hung out with the loser in the group. And that loser might be the fun person, but that loser's not, they're not going to advance in a company or go someplace.
It's an interesting variation on having those skills and riding the different technology waves that are around. It's also diversifying the group that you're with so that they have outstanding skills that you can call upon, because it's kind of impossible for one person to be an expert at everything, right?
Oh, it's impossible. Yeah.
To have like access to a brilliant marketer and a brilliant, technologist and a brilliant financial person and a brilliant lawyer, or even just really good, trustworthy versions of those people who, through their own networks, have access to the brilliant person for those times that you need a brilliant person. Again, it's kind of diversifying the skills that you have so that you can make a pivot, or you have like multiple ideas and multiple people to handle multiple different types of issues.
One thing that I think people have to be careful of, I'm the owner of the company. I'm the founder. I can tell we are going to do this. I don't do that. I want the team to come together with a plan on what we do, and we work collaborative together, because there's sometimes that Todd wants something really, really bad, but guess what? It's because I'm a geek. It's a little geeky thing that 90% of my customers will never need. So I have to be careful in prioritizing projects and stuff that we're doing that will help the 90%. Now, we've done some things recently because we had to, in what's called Podcasting 2.0, where we brought new features on because it's a chicken and egg thing. We have to be the egg or the chicken. We have to be the one that is going to basically put it out there to build adoption. But those types of projects that we do are done with the forethought that we know we're building this right now for 3%. And we want to grow it to 10, 15, 20. But those projects are rare because it goes back again. If there's stuff that I want that's in the roadmap, but it's like way down the road, if we have time and, a few extra days of dev cycle, I might be able to sneak it in there. But it's, we were very, very cognizant of the roadmap of what we do. And I'm in that document every day, like our 2023 roadmap document. I'm looking at everything deep. I'm deciding, okay, is this what we should be doing? And then every 2 weeks we have an oversight meeting with leaders of the company, and we rack and stack stuff, because sometimes priorities need to change based upon marketplace. But I think you have to be careful, because if you're working Scrum, if you interrupt the cycle, you could really do huge damage.
Oh, yeah. We don't often have a roadmap for ourselves and our careers that we look at every day and go, oh, is this really what I want this far out? Or most likely, very few people have ever even thought to try and build one, much less look at it and keep it updated.
Well, it's a company roadmap. It's not my personal roadmap, but it might as well be, because I live this 24/7.
I think Nick's saying that the company's execution is kind of analogous to an individual contributor's view of themselves as a product, right? Their career as a product. So your company is your product, and analogous to your career. And you've just pointed out how important it is for you to kind of have a vision for what it is today. I'm sure that like excellence in execution of what it is that you're doing already is important. But you've just pointed out that roadmap, I'm guessing you have some kind of innovation budget like this. Listen, we need to push the envelope here a little bit. nobody knew they needed the iPhone until the iPhone was in people's hands. And then they went, oh, I get it. I get it now that this is something that I need. And podcast hosting features are probably like that to a certain degree. But as individuals, we don't necessarily do that with our own skills and our own growth as people. And maybe we need to. We need to have sure, I'm focusing a whole bunch on execution excellence for what it is that I'm currently doing. And maybe that's a baseline, right? But I also need to have an innovation budget for myself to kind of diversify my skills and keep an eye out for that, maybe a changing technology wave, so that I'm not locked into just excellence in execution of what I'm doing. Kind of like you weren't locked into excellence in execution of just being like a media, intermediary.
I think, too, we took the approach from the very beginning because we were all remote. We had an office for a number of years, but we closed that office because COVID just, everyone has went to the wind in, 5 or 6 different states. So we bring the team together once a year and do a deep dive. We basically lock ourselves into a boardroom, and the VAT board is full, and we have an agenda, and we look at everything and solicit new ideas, and what are we doing bad and what are we doing good. And so we have that adjustment. Then every 6 months, we do another virtual one where we do like a half day. But the whole team, because we're small, big companies can't do this. If you have more than probably 20 people, this is going to get hard. But we bring the team in, and we have in-depth discussions about, where we're headed, what we're doing. The development team, they criticize the production team, we have a good discussion, and we're very frank. And we try to make sure people's feelings don't get hurt. But if some group's behind or not doing the right thing, we tactfully say, hey, we need to fix this. And we make action items from those meetings of things we implement to try to keep the flow. I will say, too, every company has a stack, and it only takes one bad apple to really make a negative impact to the company. So if you have someone that is, maybe they're brilliant, but yet maybe they're not staying current, maybe they are always fighting the process, sometimes it's better to cut those folks loose. Even though you think you shouldn't, sometimes getting rid of that, just maybe one person can completely change how a company's atmosphere is and the flow and the speed. I'll say this, we had someone leave the company about a year ago. I didn't have to ask them to leave. They left on their own. They thought it was time to go. And the company completely had a transformation from that. It was literally, it blew me away. So I learned this late, that sometimes it's just better to say, hey, thank you for your work. It's time to part ways. And it's just like pivoting. Sometimes the employee mix needs to change too.
Certainly. And a lot of people who move into leadership roles are not prepared for that mindset, that you need the right employees doing the right things with the right skills. It's a hard thing. A lot of our guests who have gone into management have highlighted that. What are some of the other challenges that you have noticed taking on the role of CEO for a company? So being in charge of the product, like you talked about with the roadmap, but also the people.
I've been pretty lucky. We've had almost zero turnover. A couple of people were asked to leave and a couple of people have left. But the team's been pretty rock solid. And that tells me that we must be doing something right. And what I really think it is, and ultimately is, we all get bored if we're doing the same thing. But we're in a business where we can build new stuff all the time and have new challenges. So I think from my perspective is, if you're not innovating, then your employees are going to get bored and they're going to go someplace that is innovating to give them a challenge. I shouldn't probably say this, but I want them going home thinking or quitting work thinking, what I'm doing is cool. It's making a difference. And I'm excited tomorrow to sit down and work on the next piece of this. That's hard to do sometimes, because sometimes we're stuck in drudgery, especially in IT, and you're updating servers. And that's just, I call that the thunking. It's the stuff that you hate to do, but you have to do. But I think the innovation piece is key. I don't know if I answered the question completely for you, but it's kind of where my mindset is.
Oh, I like it. You recognize the need for people to have purpose in their work. and you want them engaged. So you've changed, I would say you've innovated or iterated upon the methodologies that you use to engage with the people and how engaged they have become with your product as a result. Without doing the things in between, you can't get to the engagement level that you mentioned. It may be that someone listening to this is considering leadership, but hasn't really considered the impact of people feeling the purpose in what they do, and having someone like yourself share that vision with them and how their work on this product and this innovation or even making what we do better is going to impact the product, the company. How is my role here having a larger purpose for this organization? And hopefully that gives me some personal satisfaction and sense of accomplishment.
The DNA from where I came from and being able to be working on literally multiple new projects, could be monthly or, semi-annual basis, kept me excited about the job. Obviously, I had systems that I had to support that were legacy, that were going through upgrades, but it was a much slower pace. But there were systems that were brand new. So for me, I understood that job satisfaction of having something new to work on is fresh, challenging. You have to really think hard problems to solve. It's an example, in airplanes, there's two things that are not unlimited. One is power, and number two is space. And there's a give and take. So sometimes you need to put something in that would require more power, and you'd have to take something out. It was this type of a challenge, and I transformed that into the company thinking is that, okay, when we're working on these projects and stuff, we don't have a space or limited power issue because, it's just server space, right? But it's also mind space. Is this going to suck us dry from a technical support standpoint? Or is this something that, is going to run pretty autonomously and need to be touched on a basis? So all that goes into what you build. It really, really does. This AI thing has got me a little scared, but our strategy for AI is I'm not going to get locked into a language model. I'm going to be able to flip a switch if I want to go to Claude, or if I want to be on ChatGPT, or if I want to be on Meta, I can make that switch. And because we're using the dumbest AI we'll ever use right today. So it's exciting. It's an exciting time, but it's hard to pick a strategy that is not going to be obsolete in 2 weeks.
I can see that as almost feeling like you're like constantly sitting on an inflection point, and the question is like, am I going to become pets.com?
Right. You feel like the water's right here, how before someone's pushed your head and you're going to be under, and the key is to keep your head above. I always say that as long as the green line's above the red line, we're okay. And you're moving the business forward. But especially in this time right now, the economy's tight. Yeah. And podcasting itself, there's no secret, it's pretty flat. So again, it's, we went through several of these cycles of down economies. So, we knew what to expect. And again, we've been profitable every year we've been in business. Sometimes not by much, but again, as long as you keep the green line above the red line, I think that's the key in almost any business industry. Otherwise, you don't survive.
So many directions we can go in here, but I definitely want to circle back and tap into your inflection point on AI. In fact, maybe I'll pivot and save, other questions I have for a little bit later. That it seems so key. What is your viewpoint on that? Like I hear you saying we don't want to get locked into a language model. So that, again, speaks back to this, like, hey, I need to stay diverse, right? I'm not betting the business on one thing when it could be wrong. I want to be able to quickly pivot into a different direction. But when you see things happening right now, like, what is the impact of AI in podcasting? Like, is it in your vision? Is it in content development? Is it in back-end services? How do you see that working right now?
The question that I always give to myself, will this help our customers? Is something I'm going to do save them time or make their product better? And I think content development is going to help content creators and maybe get stuck creatively a little bit. I think that will be a piece of it. And then post-production piece. Lots of companies are doing the social stuff already. I don't necessarily want to compete in the social space, but it's also, what's the thing I get asked all the time? How do I grow my show? That's the number one question I get from any content creator I talk to. That's it. It's always a thing. So I have to be focused. If I'm going to do something with AI, how can I use these new tools to help them grow a show? So we've got a strategy that, we've taken about 3 to 4 months to really think this through. And if you follow my show or you follow the other show I do, I'm a new media show, I'm kind of public about what I've experimented with. So it's not like it's a big secret. But I think that what is going to happen is the thunking, that word's coming up again. I actually stole that from Google, by the way. The thunking is creating documents, creating proposals, creating outlines, drafts. That thunking is going to be done by the AI. But still, on the left-hand side of that is the creative. Those people, they're super creative. They're thinking about, okay, here's what I got planned for my podcast, and here's the guests I'm going to have for the next 3 months. That creative piece is still going to be needed, but maybe some of that show prep based upon that creative thinking is going to be done by the AI. And then on the other side of it, you have to be the subject matter expert of your topic, your content, so that when the production piece is done by the AI, you can validate and say, okay, yeah, this thing didn't run home to mama and lie, which it loves to do. It loves to make stuff up. So you have to have that other side of this where you are going to be the person that's going to review the output and say, all right, we need to change this and this and this because it got it wrong. It's not perfect. And you have to understand that it's not going to be perfect for a long time. And then, of course, the biases and all the stuff that's there. So I think our goal, and we're going to have to do a big job of educating the content creators, like, listen, this thing isn't going to get it right all the time. There's a saying in aviation, they have this book from Naval Aviation called NATOPS. It gives you all the rules, weight limits, speeds, power, everything. It's basically the Bible for the airplane. But there's one key phrase is that this book is not a substitute for common sense. All right. If the airplane's pointing down, its head toward the ground, you pull up, right? So we have to look at this from this perspective as if the AI says, oh, here's 10 topics for you. You look at those like, well, 3 of those suck. You need to make sure you throw those out because, this is not really AI yet. It's language models. So I think from that perspective, as long as the public knows that and the podcasters know that this is a tool to help with creative and help with production, they're going to be good. We're going to be coming out with a series of new things that are going to help podcasters grow their show. But some of it's tricky. Sometimes it doesn't get it right. People have to understand that, these models will lie and make stuff up. But I think if you like this type of a show where we're having a ranging discussion, AI has a hard time summarizing this. If you're doing a show where it's point, it does well at summarizing, but not a ranging show. So your show may not get as much value out of a transcript analysis as them doing a news show where I'm just talking about 20 different topics. We'll see what happens with this. But again, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I was even doing testing a couple of nights ago, and I'm like, 2 great outputs, 1, and, I'm fighting with the AI, treating it like a child. I say, if you were my intern, I'd fire you for this output. And I'm talking to it like like an intern, which is kind of weird, but that's what they say you're supposed to do.
It's the tool and the SME, subject matter expert, and those bubble areas just changing a little bit is what I hear.
Yeah. You got to have the SME on this side, on that output side, to say, that's too flowery, or did it just ramble, or did it interject something I really didn't talk about in a show summary? And those types of things. And it's going to be true for any type of output you get from these systems for a while. It's going to need a lot of hand-on, but it'll get better over time. I think it's going to get better rapidly.
It sounds like you think the biggest problem that can be solved is the blank page problem. Like the person staring at the blank page saying, what are we going to talk about in this show? And then on the back end, the person looking at the transcript going, how am I going to summarize this?
Right.
So if you get rough drafts for both of those things, it's a lot easier to go back and edit than it is to create from that blank page.
And podcasters have been notoriously lazy for putting out good show notes. And, this is not necessarily a business advice, but it's a podcast advice, is you record for your audience. You write for Google, because the writing piece is what Google is going to chew up And as this AI models get bigger, search is going to change, and you want your content to be the source to saying, hey, go look at this show and this content or this episode. So the metadata that you actually give Google is going to become more and more important.
Well, listen, as we wind down here, Todd, we want to say thank you so much for this discussion. If people want to come back to the source of the knowledge shared on this show and speak to you, where can they find you?
It's easy. It's Todd at Blubrry.com. That's Blubrry without the E's because they cost $2 million and we couldn't afford it. So Todd at Blubrry.com is the best way. I'm on LinkedIn and every other place, or Facebook. Just search for my name, Todd Cochrane. You'll find me.
And I know that you're hurting for listeners on your podcast, so maybe you could plug those here.
Yeah, well, in the new media show, the saying we have is you listen to the show long enough, you'll get a PhD in podcasting. I can't issue a certificate, though. The Geek News Central is my tech show, the Genesis Show. It's a twice-weekly tech show where I dive into the stories. It could be science. It could be something that the FCC is doing. It's a wide, broad stroke of everything tech. And then the show that we do for the company is called Podcast Insider. There's 3 of us where we talk about specific topics and strategies for podcasting. But the new media show, I have a lot of fun. Rob Greenlee is my co-host, and he's worked for every podcast hosting company. Basically, he's existed. So it was kind of funny doing a show with a competitor. He's no longer a hosting competitor, but he's got his own thing. So we still have a great time doing that show.
It's co-opetition.
Yeah.
The joke I always used to say was like, hey, we're not fighting over pieces of pie. We're in a pie factory.
Absolutely.
There's more pie than we can eat. Let's figure out ways to eat pie faster. Todd, thanks so much for your time. It's been really terrific to listen to your story and some of the lessons that you've learned and the interesting vision that you have for the future as well.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's been fun doing a little bit of a deep dive here.
Nick, listening back, it's just remarkable how Todd's story encapsulates so many of the principles we talk about on the Nerd Journey podcast. It's an honor to have his wisdom preserved in our archives.
It really is. And as we talked about from the beginning, the theme of evolving one's career over time is super powerful. And hearing him detail that strategic shift from media agency to service provider with his business, it's a powerful reminder that to be relevant in our industry means we have to adapt, but without losing the core of who we are and what we've built.
Absolutely. And it all came from that authentic place of being a lifelong tinkerer. Todd was always curious. He was always learning, which is why he was always one step ahead. From his early days in the Navy to his final thoughts on AI, his career was a testament to the idea that if you follow your curiosity, you'll always find your path.
And his impact in our industry is undeniable, whether that's staying on top of the technology or the technology within the podcast space. He built the tools that empower so many voices to keep doing this, including ours. He was a pioneer, a mentor to many, and a true friend to the podcasting community.
Yeah. Todd Cochrane will be deeply missed. Our thoughts are with his family, his friends, and the entire Blubrry team. We don't want to pretend that we knew him well, but we were just strongly influenced by everything that he did. And we're grateful to have been part, even a small part, of his journey. And I think that he lives on. He lives on in the people that he influenced and the people that they influenced. So rest in power, Todd. Farewell, listeners. Tune in next time as the journey continues. I'm John White at BJourneyman. For Nick Cordy at Network Nerd _ signing off.
Adios.